Welcome. My name is Martin Bourque. I'm the Executive Director of the Ecology Center, and I'm going to talk about how Berkeley passed its single-use disposable foodware and litter reduction ordinance. It was an amazing accomplishment, took a couple of years to happen, and it's been replicated in many cities, or elements of it have been replicated in many cities. And this video is intended to supplement our website toolkit that can help you to take on a campaign like this in your own city, or to advocate for elements of this in county, state, local, federal law. The Ecology Center was founded in 1970. We're a community-based organization. We started the first curbside recycling program in 1973. So we've been doing recycling a long time. We are global, meaning we think globally and act locally, and we work on local projects and then try and bring them to scale, for the pilots that work. We've always had a very strong social justice orientation, and part of our mission, which is to inspire and build a sustainable, healthy, and just future for the East Bay, California, and beyond. Some of our key program areas are in food and farming, climate action, toxics and health. We have a youth development program, and we are a trusted community organization that brings together people from the community, like those in this picture, and helps to drive local, regional, and change and beyond our borders. As I mentioned, we started curbside recycling in 1973. It was a very grassroots, community-based effort, recognizing that if we really wanted to make an impact on consumerism and waste, we were going to have some way to separate out recyclables at the curb and not just have drop-off or buyback type programs. We continue to operate that program today under contract with the city of Berkeley, and it's a modern recycling program. We use a dual split cart program where we rely on residents to separate cans and bottles from cardboard and paper in alignment with our high environmental standards and high quality standards. This really makes sure that we have very little contamination in the recycling program, and is kind of a backdrop to this foodware ordinance, because in our recycling program, we were getting all this plastic foodware that was really contaminating the paper and the glass and other valuable materials. We are a mission-based environmental recycling organization. It's somewhat unique, but we have other partners around the country, and together we have founded the Alliance of Mission-Based Recyclers, AMBER, and I encourage you to check out our website and learn more about that. The Ecology Center has a long history of calling out the myths around plastic packaging and plastic recycling in particular. Goes back to the early days of California's bottle bill, when they moved from a glass refill program to a deposit return system that enabled the shift to plastic bottles. We fought that. We fought the false narratives around plastics and recycling associated with those chasing arrows and false labeling. In 1996, we've helped found the Berkeley Plastics Task Force and wrote one of the early reports on plastic recycling that really took a hard look at some of the myths that were being promoted at the time and that are still being repeated today. On our ecologycenter.org website, you can find the Berkeley Plastic Task Force report. A lot of that content is still totally relevant. We fought the industry's efforts to paint this picture that all plastics are recyclable, and that there's some magic place where recycling happens with rainbows and unicorns. Of course, this is not true. It's a really gritty, dirty reality. And, we've worked with our partners internationally through the Global Alliance for Incinerator Alternatives and Break Free from Plastic movement to counter these narratives, because in California, at least, and in the West, this collect, sort, export model of recycling has really caused a lot of damage internationally. We got into it really deep and wanted to know where all that stuff was going, and pioneered some plastic tracking of exports, and found that many of the bales of mixed plastics that included a lot of foodware were being dumped and burned and handled in really horrific ways, and contributing to ocean pollution and other things. So this Foodware ordinance was really designed to be a waste prevention and waste reduction strategy, which was really unique. And so we became the anchor organization for this foodware reduction and litter reduction ordinance. But at the core of it, we're really trying to challenge not just plastic packaging, but the whole throwaway culture overall. So it's focused on the plastic foodware, but also recognizing that other disposable foodware is problematic as well. And even, the cleanest, best compostable foodware still has an impact much higher than reusables. And so we really wanted to focus on reuse and refill, and reject, this idea that disposables were safer or cheaper or more convenient. All of those things turned out to be myths that we could tackle, and did in this ordinance. What does the ordinance do? Well, right away when it went into law in March of 2019, it required that foodware, accessory foodware, that's straws, utensils, napkins, lids, stirrers, all of that stuff, could only be by request or in a self-serve station in all food service outlets. And that if you had self-busing in your restaurant, self-service for to a garbage can. If you had a garbage can accessible to the public, you also have to have a compost bin and a recycling bin. But really, from the recycling perspective, our goal was to reduce the amount of foodware and to remove the confusion that people have, like, oh, well, is this compostable or is it recyclable? Does it go in the gray bin or the green bin or the blue bin? And we did lots of events where there's food service, and you look in those bins and it all looks the same. People are really confused. And so, the recycling bin looks like the compost bin, looks like the garbage bin. So we really wanted to keep this simple. The only thing really coming out of food service, out of a food vendor in a restaurant or a cafe for recycling should be cans and bottles. End of story. Everything else should be BPI certified compostable. And that went into effect on January 1st, 2020. And so having those compost bins available to the customer so that they could, if it touches food and it's packaging, it goes in there. And that was, really trying to simplify that message and make sure that the foodware is safe, because we're also finding out that a lot of this compostable foodware had fluorinated toxic chemicals in it that are used as a barrier to liquids and grease in particular. And so that BPI certification is important. We also wanted to really drive bring your own for cups, coffee cups in particular, but the ordinance covers hot and cold beverages, and it charges 25 cents for all disposable cups. So it really puts a price on that convenience and makes it visible to the customer. That has to be visible on the receipt as well as on the menu, so that customers can see, oh, this, convenience of disposability has a cost, and I, as the customer, are going to pay it this time, because otherwise I can bring my own cup, or I can get a ceramic cup and sit here and have a beverage in-house. The third element, is that for all in-house dining, all the foodware would be reusable. And that, all of us have sitting down to a meal in a restaurant and then look down and there's a big pile of garbage in front of you. What was your food is now a pile of garbage, suddenly transformed. And so this was the idea, is to really get away from disposables for in-house dining. And that is really a big part of this, and one of the greatest challenges that we faced. the first, the ordinance passed with those elements, but it also had a council item attached to it that referred to staff a number of other things, including a small business technical assistance program, reusable and dishwashing mini grants, and foodware service pilot project that staff are supposed to run probably through a third-party contractor, and then requiring staff to come back to council with recommendations on a charge, not just for cups, but also for food containers. So passing this ordinance took a lot. It was the leadership, local leadership from our elected officials, an amazing assortment of community members. Having free and fair elections is a really important framework that I'll touch on in a minute. A lot of collaboration and organizations that are near and dear to us and who really stepped up to help to make it happen. Structure and organization and the anchor organization of the Ecology Center, a lot of community and business outreach and engagement, responsiveness in terms of responding to what the feedback that we got from all of that work was, and then just like a constant approach of gratitude, like this is amazing and we have to really appreciate all the assets that have come forward to make it possible. On the leadership front, we had in 2016 elected two city councilmen, a mayor and city council member, who had in their platform zero waste and waste reduction as part of their campaign election. So when they were elected, we came to them and said, well, what are you thinking? They said, well, you tell us what are the greatest things we can do, not just to enhance composting or recycle more, but really to waste less. How can we really focus on reduction? And so starting from that point of saying, okay, we've got some champions on council. They want to do something innovative. They want to do something meaningful. And so that's when our work began. But, really, the spectrum was wide open. We had a lot of amplitude to try out something new. And we, in Berkeley, we have that because we have these progressive city leaders. But we have them in part because of our free and fair and transparent elections. And so not having the very loud voices of outside industry groups and lobbyists, they came to town for sure, but they can't contribute tens of thousands of dollars to a local elected official. They have to declare how much money they do give. They have to report on their lobbying efforts. So, it's just a very different playing field when you have sunshine, transparency, campaign contribution limits. What they really are concerned about, our city council, is the voters in this town, their constituents, the small businesses. They have a much, much louder voice than larger business interests. And that just is a very important and powerful framework for us to start on. But building on that, we had this amazing coalition of partners, Upstream, Rethink Disposable, Surfrider Foundation, Greenpeace, Plastic Pollution Coalition, Gaia, Story of Plastic, amazing local individuals related to these organizations, employees of these organizations, but really came together and we started working. We started meeting monthly, but then we had subcommittees that were meeting weekly or sometimes even more frequently to get some of the work done. And, initially, at the beginning was just like, storming, brainstorming. What are the ideas? What are the things that we could maybe include in this? I'm beginning to explore and do research, like what have other cities done? How would we want to approach it? How can we build our collaboration and really play to our strengths of the people and organizations in the coalition, and beginning to really prepare and have documents and resources available that we could go out and start to build on. And in phase 2, we're really focusing on aligning the group around some core things that we were and also we're not going to try and achieve. And so at that point we had a general framework and concept, and we're going around and kind of pitching it to different entities and different stakeholders in the system. then listening and getting feedback and really responding to that and adjusting the language and the proposal in the ordinance language to really be responsive to the feedback that we're getting from customers and residents and voters, as well as from businesses and city staff and the business districts, et cetera. And then phase 3 was really to consolidate all that energy and to defend it against pressures from outside, which there were some, and then to have a really strong turnout at city council, in which we ended up with unanimous support from city council, and finally to celebrate our accomplishments. We have broken up into several working groups. We had a business outreach team. They did a business survey. They talked to the business improvement districts. They found spokespeople from local businesses who are in support of this. They did site visits, including taking Councilmember Hahn to numerous local businesses and going, behind the counter into the kitchen to look at, what the real implications of this ordinance might be. And they did some industry opposition engagement, as well as research, and trying to find out who's going to come out against this and for what. The legislative team was really working on drafting the specific language that would go into a city ordinance, and we were lucky to have some real experts in that arena. Jack Macy from the city of San Francisco, Peter Schultz-Allen, our board was an expert, Marion Gordon from Upstream, people who'd really written a lot of municipal code and could understand the importance of specific words and framings, whether it's a tax or a fee. This matters in California. And then working with our council leaders and the Zero Waste Commission and those revisions that I mentioned to the language in order to get it to a place where we could get unanimous support from council. There was also a group working on the community outreach. They had a petition gathering campaign. We had some amazing young people involved in that. Berkeley Considers is a city-run poll. And so we were able to get on that city platform to poll residents about what they thought about the ordinance. Had an amazing response from that, 90% plus responded positively to the proposal. And then pushing out social media and creating memes and things that could be shared and replicated, and then also doing press work. So these were the the working groups that we had, and we would come to they'd meet independently, we'd come together in broader coalition meetings to share notes. Our meeting agendas were really report from the business outreach, report from legislative, report from community outreach, and then next steps. There was a lot of outreach to businesses. It was a major concern for Councilmember Hahn and the mayor that the businesses really be consulted. Small business is really important in our town, and they're facing a lot of challenges even before the pandemic. So there was a survey done of businesses. Almost 10% of those affected by the ordinance were surveyed. At 59 out of 60 of them all mentioned something that they found problematic with disposable foodware. And, whether it was, it's really expensive, or it takes a lot of time for me to order and manage, or I don't like that it gets littered around the neighborhood, or it costs me a lot to dispose of, or I really hate that I pay for it to give to my customers and then I pay for it to be taken away as garbage. Everybody had something basically that they saw a problem with. Pretty uniformly, they didn't want outright bans. And 2 out of 3 said they would support a charge for cups and or containers if they got to keep that money, which is a very similar structure to California's plastic bag reduction, carryout bag reduction law. And they also wanted something, if you're going to do it, make it uniform and create a level playing field so that, I'm not doing it. I don't create a situation where I have to do it when my competitor doesn't. So that level playing field was pretty important. The business improvement districts got behind it to a certain degree. They were sort of in between, but really they are paying up for a lot of street cleanup. The Telegraph Business Improvement District collects 75 tons of mostly foodware litter from the street every year. And the downtown business district has 6 staff that are doing this. It's an eyesore. Even having all those garbage cans out there is a problem for them. So the businesses are somewhat wary of city ordinance and control and demand. So they were playing, sort of like, well, we want to clean up the streets, but we don't want to make it too rough for our businesses. They're also, some of their top concerns were around homelessness and the impact of that on the business district and the increased cost to businesses for our minimum wage ordinance. So we're very aware of those big factors affecting local business as well. For city staff, they always go, whenever we try and pass some new ordinance or something, they always go to, oh, it'll be impossible to enforce. We're going to need a lot more staff. But we just started working with the different departments. We went to environmental health and talked about the health code and how this fit into that and the benefits of reusables on site. We talked to economic development and how this ordinance would improve the dining experience for customers. To eat on real plates is much better than a much better experience than off a paper plate or something. We talked to Public Works, who is facing a 0 litter to storm drains requirement from the state water boards, and had just put in 209 litter capture devices in the storm drains, and then spending $2 million more a year to service those storm drains. So they recognize the benefit to their efforts to clean up the stormwater, and were quite amazing in coming out and say, what, we actually have the money for this in our zero waste fund to do the enforcement and education that's going to be necessary. It went to our zero waste. First was from City Council. They took the language and referred it to the Zero Waste Commission, which is advisory to City Council. And this commission then had 6 public hearings where people could come out and speak to the issue. I didn't have a good photo of this, so this is actually a picture about housing, but we had a really good turnout. Business owners, residents, people from different community groups came out and spoke to the commission. They got over 60 official written responses that they put together into a packet, consolidated that feedback, and made recommendations to City Council that were then incorporated in the final version. We had these young activists who were amazing from Oxford Elementary School with our amazing teacher, Jackie Omania, leading them. And they they gathered a whole lot of petition signatures. They lobbied City Council very effectively. They called out adults because in their classroom, they're able to reduce their waste dramatically for the whole school year into like one tiny mason jar. They're like, if we can do it, so can you. Spoke to the social injustice of exporting our waste to other countries and polluting other countries. In terms of our responsiveness, we really wanted to hear back from different communities that are affected. First and foremost, the business community, they had concerns about refillable food containers. They felt they were ready to go with cups, but not containers. So we initially had food container charges and other things, and that came out. But we were also very doing outreach early on to the disabilities community, to low-income customers, to the staff addressing issues of staffing and permits and technical assistance and exemptions to local businesses. And in the end, there was a kind of a big debate or discussion around straws in particular, which I say straws are the tip of the wasteberg, but for the disabled community were really important. And we managed to find some language that worked that encouraged businesses to maintain a supply of disposable straws for those who might need them. And in the end, we had an amazing event at City Council with over an hour of public comment. Dozens of people spoke, very compelling public comment that kind of countered concern after concern after concern that council might have. We had these young activists, as I mentioned, these elementary school kids. And, you know, when council asked city staff, like, are you going to have the resources to do this? They said yes. So all of these factors really took away any reason that a council member might vote no or speak out against it. And, you know, we ended with just a party and a real appreciation of our history, our city council, you know, the Ecology Center as an anchor organization, all the community advocates, the campaign limits and election transparency that allowed us to do this kind of thing. Our forward-thinking businesses who are already doing this similar kind of stuff, or ready to make the leap, and a receptive city staff. So hopefully this has been informative for you and got you thinking about what might be possible in your local community. In our toolkit online on our website, you'll find a lot of resources, as well as other organizations. There's a National Reuse Network. Upstream Solutions Organization is doing an incredible job in spreading this approach in other cities, so you can reach out to them. And of course, you can always reach out to the Ecology Center at info@ecologycenter.org. Thanks a lot.